We begin in the Middle East, where over the weekend, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Iran launched nearly a dozen cruise missiles and over 20 drones in an attack on a key Saudi oil facility. With tensions already high, Trump warned the U.S. was locked and loaded. I want to bring in Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. Louis, good to see you. How do we know who's responsible for this?
Well, Kimberly, two things that are going on. One is that U.S. officials are telling us that, yes, Iran was responsible for this attack, that it's not the Houthi rebels in Yemen who are claiming responsibility for this attack that was behind it. They're saying that these missiles could have only come from one direction, which was from the north, which would have been from Iran. We also have Saudi military spokesman telling reporters in Riyadh just moments ago that, yes, it was Iran that was responsible for this. They're not saying that it was the Yemenis because they said that they looked at some of the remnants of some of these devices that were left behind that may not have exploded, or the remnants that did after explosions, and they are Iranian-made, and that the Houthis in Yemen could not have been responsible. So what we saw on Sunday was the administration releasing the satellite imagery that showed the precision with which some of these strikes occurred at these very large oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, and they're pointing the fingers all the way at Iran on this one.
So I just want to talk about the rhetoric that President Trump used. He said locked and loaded. What did those words actually mean? Because this could be confusing, since that kind of implies war.
No, you're exactly right. It's kind of reminiscent of the language that the president used back in May when the Iranians were blamed for shooting down an American-made drone over the Persian Gulf. And yes, that language kind of implies, yes, some bellicosity behind it, right? But I think what is going on is, what we do know is that the president is meeting with his national security team, what they call a principals meeting at the White House, and he's being presented a range of options. It could be military options. It could be from the Treasury Department, and maybe more sanctions. It could be from the State Department, maybe seeking a more diplomatic course of action to increase the maximum pressure campaign against Iran if they are to blame for this. But that locked and loaded language, I think, implies that it's anything within that range of options that the United States could respond to. But ultimately, it's going to be about what the U.S. feels that the Saudis, because this was an attack against Saudi Arabia, so how are they going to respond? And then how is the U.S. going to assist them in potentially any response they choose?
So with this attack, this rocked the global energy prices. So what do we know about that?
It's definitely rocked the crude oil prices. We're talking millions of barrels of oil that come out of Saudi Arabia each day, and this is equivalent to about 5% of the world's oil supply. For the United States, in recent years, over the last decades, it's ramped up its oil supply domestically, and so we are no longer as dependent as we used to be on oil from the Middle East, particularly from Saudi Arabia. But any time that you have a situation like this that's going to destabilize the oil markets, it could potentially destabilize other markets as well. And so everybody is watching this closely because, as we know, anything that impacts oil is going to lead to domestic pressures. We saw over the weekend that President Trump indicated that he would be willing to authorize the release of any oil from what's called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is oil that's been set aside within the United States in case oil prices need to go up way too high so that they can maintain the oil flow and ultimately gas for our cars here at stateside.
All right, Louis Martinez right there at the Pentagon. Thank you so much for joining us.